turning dreams into reality. In the night with the
All right, I believe we are live now. What's up, y'all? How you guys doing? Was waiting for the confirmation that we were actually good to go. But I hope that you guys are having an absolutely amazing Thursday evening. Let me just make sure that we are actually inside of the group. Perfect. We are good to go. For those of y'all that have recently started joining following Pre-PT Grinder, you recently joined this Facebook community. Welcome. You are in the right place. Every single Thursday night, Casey and I come in here into this group and do a live training for you that'll help y'all, navigate your way into PT school acceptance. And our job is just literally, our job at Pre-PT Grind is to help y'all get into PT school without having to waste a lot of time and money, doing a lot of things that many of us don't realize might actually be holding us back as students. And so every single Thursday night, we are here to add immense amounts of value. So just block it off every single week. And we'll be right here taking care of you guys every Thursday, typically at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And then if anything changes, we will always let you know. But for those of y'all that are joining us live tonight, comment #TeamLive. For those of y'all that are joining on replay, let us know that you're on replay below. But tonight we have an extremely interesting topic, but we've talked about GPA before, but it's a topic that we have to constantly, address because a lot of us are in different places GPA wise. Some of us have 4.0s, some of us have 2.4s, some of us have, 2.9s and 3.2s, and we're all over the place. And at the end of the day, we all have this fear that we're not going to be good enough, right? Like my GPA is not going to be good enough. My stats won't be good enough. And, and I want to be a physical therapist, but what if it's too late? Like, what if I've kind of missed my shot? What if I've already ruined it for myself? And so tonight, what Casey and I are going to talk about is what can I do if my current or past GPA is threatening to take away my chances of getting into PT school. That's what we're talking about. So before we dive into it, can you guys comment me below if you have ever had any nervousness or fears about your GPA being a setback for you or holding you back, or maybe not being as good as it could be, or maybe you're comparing yourself to other classmates and you're like, yo, like they got higher GPAs than me. Does that mean that my shot of getting accepted into PT school is less than theirs, right? And so how many of you have had that fear? Because I sure did. Casey, did you have that fear as a pre-PT? All right, perfect. And many of the students that we've coached have had that same fear. So it's okay to have it, but let's talk about it tonight, because when we talk about it, then we can actually, create a solution and help you guys navigate through it. So Casey, let's see who's here live with us. Perfect. We have Dr. Patel, we have Michael, we have Christina. I'm literally having fears about it currently. Yeah, y'all, listen, like this is such a big fear. And the thing is, like, especially for a lot of us as pre-PTs, what are we hearing, right? Like when we talk about our GPAs, like usually what we hear out there, what we read in threads, or when we talk to our advisor, it usually scares us even more, right? I can't tell you guys how many times like our pre-PT advisor, when we were an undergraduate, like I can't tell you how many students our advisor literally told, your GPA is not good enough, pick something else. Like I cannot tell you how many times that was told to people that were in my cohort, like classmates that Casey and I had, people that we started college with who wanted to become physical therapists. And I think that narrative adds to the fear, right? Then what adds to the fear is what we see in other students when we're seeing, oh my goodness, that person has a 3.8. That person has a 3.9. That person has a 4.0. I have a 3.1. There is no way I'm going to be able to compete with that person. There's no way I'm ever going to add up to that person. And so let's talk about it, because prior to us even addressing this, I just want you guys to understand that we do these live streams because Casey and I literally, like, Maybe it's because we've just coached too many students and we've just seen every possible scenario at this point. But more importantly, we honestly believe that every single one of you has the ability to get into PT school. Regardless of where you're at with your GPA, like that's what we believe, and that's what we want to help you guys navigate through and deal with. But when I do have a lower GPA, when I do have that fear of my GPA holding me back, like how do I deal with that so that this thing that Casey and Joseph keep saying about me being able to get into PT school, so that I can actually make that a reality? Because this is the dream, that you've had, whether it started when you were in 8th grade or in college or whenever. You becoming a physical therapist is super, super possible. Let's just talk about how to deal with this part. So Casey, talk to us about it, man. Like when I feel like my GPA is threatening my ability to actually get into PT school, like where do I begin? How can I take a step back? What are certain perspective shifts that I need to have so that I can become a strong applicant, so that I can still set myself up to get accepted into PT school? What are your thoughts, brother?
Yeah, so I'm going to be the devil's advocate here and give some tough love first and say that your fears, your fears might be a good thing. The fact that you think it's threatening you may be a good thing, because that might give you the stress you need to get your stuff in order. And I'm just saying that straight out of love, because we don't want to sugarcoat anything. You do have to put in work. You do have to have certain requirements, all that stuff. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to just rip the Band-Aid off and we'll make it better later, right? We work with pain all day with patients, so we're not afraid of that. So that's the first thing. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It might give you the stress you need to quote unquote heal, if we're talking about physical therapy terms. So if a patient is injured or this or that, when you load the tissues, you put stress on their bodies in different ways so that they can heal properly. So that stress that you're feeling, that threatening feeling like, oh my gosh, my GPA is not good enough. Well, maybe for some of you, that may be true. Now, is that a death sentence is where it comes in to the other side? No, it's not a death sentence. You can still improve your circumstances. You can still retake classes and get better grades and all that stuff and get into PT school. You're not doomed. But at the same time, for some of you, you might need a wake-up call, or you might need that alarm going, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I should get better, so that when you do apply, it's not too late, so that you hear that fire alarm now, so that you don't die in the fire. That may be a good thing. So that's the first thing. Don't necessarily view it as a bad thing. Just view it as something that's kicking you into gear to make sure that you get the result you want. Because if it never goes off, if the alarm never goes off, you don't know you're in danger. And some of you might be in danger. And we don't want you to get to the application cycle and be like, I never knew they never wanted a 1.7 GPA. Or I never knew I wasn't good enough with my 2.7 or whatever, right? So that's the first thing. Then next, now what can you do about that? Now that that alarm has gone off, what can you do about your GPA? Well, one, of course, you can increase your GPA. But going a little deeper into that, with increasing your GPA, maybe you need a new fire under you. So we already talked about the threat and the stress and all that stuff, but a new fire meaning this: when you try to improve your grades and improve your GPA, what is blocking you? Like, what is stopping you? Like, what makes you say, oh, I don't want to study? I think is a key part of that. Because that might be a block for a lot of you from improving your GPA and getting where you need to be to get into PT school. Because once you can do that, or you can change that in your mind and say, instead of saying, oh, I don't want to study, you can say, oh, shoot, I have to study to get this result because I have these goals and dreams. So if you change it, instead of saying, oh, physics doesn't make any sense, I don't know why I'm taking this, chemistry is stupid, I'm going into PT school, it doesn't matter. You don't have the same motivation to get an A in chemistry as if you would have it if you said, oh, shoot, I want to work with runners, and I can't work with runners with Achilles heel pain to help them complete marathons unless I get this chemistry class done. Shoot, let me get on my ass and study. Like, let's go, get your ass up and get on that computer. Like, let's go. That might be what some of you need. But if you're not thinking of it that way and just saying, oh, chemistry is so stupid, you don't have that same fire, that same motivation, that same grit that schools want. to get the grades you want, because you're going to need that. Let us tell you right now, when you get to PT school. I'm just keeping it real. So that's the thing. Then next, you might need some new study habits. Maybe your study habits aren't up to par like they need to be. So yeah, have that motivation, but you keep hitting a roadblock because you're not studying right. So I recommend active recall, spaced repetition, the Feynman technique, Pomodoro method. I recommend those. Those are what I used. Maybe you need some new study techniques. Next, applying to schools that match your stats will be key as well. So if the school wants a 3.9, because that's just how they roll, it's their school, they can accept whoever they want, and you roll up there with the 3.2, just don't be surprised if you're on the wait list or they immediately reject you. Whereas if you apply to the school that accepts a 3.3 and you have a 3.2, hey, let's go. So that's what you need to keep in mind as well. If the schools require a GRE, depending on the school, can offset that lower GPA. Then lastly, I guess this kind of ties it all up in a bow, is that accountability as well. Maybe you just don't have anybody to keep being in your face to say, hey, let's go. You wanted this, right? Because it's easy to just say, oh, I don't feel like it today. Yeah, I had the motivation yesterday. Yeah, I was feeling good. Yes, and all that stuff. But nobody's watching now. Pre-PT grind hasn't posted in 17 hours. I can slack off. I don't need to study. Maybe you need some accountability to keep you on track. So whether that's us or something or someone else, get that accountability, because if you don't have it, and those of you who are personal trainers, coaches, whatever, like, you know, if you're working with clients, or maybe you're even PT techs in the clinic, you know that accountability is key. Because as soon as they go home, they're not doing their exercise program. They're coming back to do it there because they are held accountable at PT. So that last part, maybe you need some accountability. And if you do, acceptancenavigator.com and acceptancesystem.com. So check those out. So branch off of that, Joseph, take us away.
Yeah, man. Oh my goodness. Yo, Casey's hitting it right on the money. And for those of y'all that are just tuning in right now, what we're talking about tonight is, what can I do if my current or past GPA is threatening to take away my chances of getting into PT school? And for those of y'all that have been following us, whether for years or for a few hours, our belief is that every single student can, C-A-N, can y'all put can? Put that in the chat. Like, I want y'all to understand that this is actually possible, because we're not coming from the perspective of, well, your GPA is low, sucks. Like, no, none of that. But we are going to talk about what it's actually going to take, because we've just seen it happen with some of the most extreme situations. And chances are you're probably not as extreme as many of those, scenarios that we could come up with. And because they could do it, you can do it too. We just have to talk about what it actually takes, because a lot of us are functioning off of, a fear that is not being utilized properly. Casey was just talking about how fear can actually be a good thing, right? If you use it properly, but many of us are kind of treating it like like an indicator on our car, right? It says like a check engine light, and we just look at it and say, well, hopefully it turns off eventually. That's kind of how we treat the whole GPA conversation. And so Casey just told y'all like straight up how it works, and for those of y'all who are just listening to Casey's part, and there's a few things I want to add on. Like, if that made sense, can you just put makes sense in the chat? Because we just want you to understand what level of control you have as a pre-PT over this part. Like, I think a lot of us we're too passive about it. Like, we feel like, well, man, I've already finished up 4 years. My GPA is not great. Oh, well, my freshman year was terrible. Or my first 2 years of college were not good. Or, hey, I was doing a different, like I was on a different career path and I had harder classes. Like, for example, I spoke to a few students recently who were actually doing pre-med, right? And because they were doing pre-med, some of the classes that they took were pretty hard, right? And so it kind of screwed up their GPA, and they were like, oh my gosh, like I can't go back. I don't know, like how am I? So they were stuck in this reality of, I can't change it. And basically because of that, they felt like victims. And that's not what we want you guys to stay stuck in. If that's the mindset you're in, you can't actually shift it to actually work in your favor. So few quick things that I want to add to what Case said is, number one, control. Like, control. Understand what you can control. Like, you cannot control your past. Like, you cannot, what I just said right now, you can't control it. You can't change it. Like if you, whatever you've already finished up until this point, you can't change it. Just accept that first, right? Like to just like be real and say, hey, my GPA is what it is. I can't go back and just like change my whole, cumulative GPA. It's not going to change all that much anyway, even if you retake another 20 classes, right? But like, what can I change? What do I have the ability to control? Obviously, with prerequisite classes, I love getting the question, hey, I have 4 C minuses in my prereqs. Should I retake them? Well, is that something you can control? like, does that actually work in your favor if those C minuses turn to A's? Well, yeah. So cool. Go retake them because you can control them. I think sometimes we make it too complicated and we overwhelm ourselves with the things that we can't change. Like, if you can't change it, you can't change it. And I think once you can start absorbing that first reality, then it's like, all right, now I need to focus all of my energy on the things that I can actually change. Cool. Next thing is turn your GPA fears and struggles into a strength. Turn them into a strength. I think one thing that we forget is that schools love seeing growth. Schools love seeing that the version of yourself now is not the version that maybe was struggling, 2 years ago, right? Like if your first 3 years of college were terrible, but you show them that you've locked back in, that you're serious about getting into PT school and they're seeing this shift, like that's a massive plus. Like use it as a strength. Use it to show how resilient you are. Use it to show how resourceful you are. Use it to show how, things really can't pin you down. Back to resilience, right? Like use it to show, because what it does is it actually shows different, like a student. So we've coached hundreds of students in our coaching program, the accepted system and more. And I literally some of the students that have struggled the most prior to even starting in our program, and have been able to push through all of that, the version of themselves when they get accepted into PT school is very different. Like, in fact, we have an interview coming up in a few weeks and she'll share it. Like, I remember the first time I got on this call with this one student, she was a mess, right? She was freaking out, right? And by the time she got her acceptance letter, I just remember her saying things like, Joseph, I am insanely confident in myself. Joseph, I gave these schools everything I could possibly give them. Joseph, I know that I'm not afraid of failing. I don't see failure as these were things she was telling me. She was like, I don't see failure as an end. Like, it's just my ability to shift that and use it to my favor, or show that I can go back at it again. Like, show that I really want this that bad. And I was like, yo, that was not the same person I spoke to the first time we started working together. So see it as an opportunity to turn it into a strength, because not only will that GPA shift, the one that you can control, of course, right? Not only will it shift, but you will also shift. You will also grow. You will also become this version of yourself that you would have never been able to tap into had everything just been nice and smooth. Does that make sense? Like, y'all, let me throw this out here too. Don't let 4.0s fool you. Like someone who has a 4.0 has worked hard for it, yes, but I have seen students who have had 4.0s get into PT school and crumble because they never had to maybe they didn't have to fight as hard. Some of them did. And I'm not trying to discredit anything, but don't let numbers deceive you into thinking that someone is more qualified than you. Just use your situation and say, how can I turn this to a strength? Last point is what Casey was talking about. Make decisions using what is actually there and not what you want to be there. Does that make sense? So, for example, Casey was talking about picking schools that are actually in alignment with where you're at or where you're pushing to be at. Remember, we're working on, what we can control, right? Like, which schools match up with me statistically? Like, when I see students that are like, oh my gosh, I have like a 2.7, cumulative GPA, and I'm applying to schools that need a minimum 3.5. Well, if they need a minimum 3.5, then are we really being wise with how we're doing it? And also understanding that there's a lot of schools out there that do look at lower GPAs, that do look at other areas that would be more so aligned with where you're at. Like, are you willing to say, hey, my goal is to get into PT school because I want to become a physical therapist. I'm not necessarily going to be super, super married to this one school that I've always wanted to go to. And even if I'm not a match for it, I'm still going to force my way through it. Y'all, we have to make decisions based off of what's actually there. Because the goal was not to get into PT school. Casey says that a lot. He's like, your goal was not to get into physical therapy school. Your goal was always to become a physical therapist. So whatever gets us there is what's more important. Does that make sense? And so whether that means that, whether that means getting the right guidance, whether that means getting a support system or people that are going to push you through this whole thing, that's how you navigate through this. That's how we turn this GPA that feels like a threat to our ability to get into PT school. That's how we flip it in our favor. And then we get to work. Because being passive about this whole thing, and I think this is a danger, Casey, sometimes when we share stories, because we do share a lot of stories of, students that we have coached who have started with low GPAs. Like we had a student that we shared a few years ago, Ben Kemp. He had a 2.4 GPA when he started working with us. And I think students want an excuse sometimes. Like they're like, oh my gosh, he had a 2.4. I have a super low GPA. Okay, he got in. Let me just go for it. Like don't look for excuses to stay where you're at. Always ask yourself, what can I possibly shift and change? And a lot of those students whose stories we share, that's what they did. And when they lined those ducks up or those dominoes up and then just like took action, they ultimately got into physical therapy school. And so that's the game. Now, is that always pretty? No. Is that always easy? Many times, no, right? But does it allow you to get to your goal of becoming a physical therapist? You betcha. Does it mean that you have to quit? Absolutely not. You only quit if you want to quit, right? So that's the key. So hopefully this helped. For those of y'all that are struggling with your GPA, you are not alone. The reason why we even did this live stream and the reason why we've talked about GPA many times before, the reason why we will talk about it in the future many times is because so many students like yourself are also struggling with it. But many students also are led to believe that they're less than, led to believe that they can't control much, led to believe that they're not qualified or good enough to get into PT school. And that's just not the truth. So anything else to add, Casey?
Yeah, I think just the last thing, what we both were saying is don't succumb to your GPA. If you guys say that you're better than your GPA, then now is the time to prove it. Oh, I'm so much better than my GPA. I'm not this number. Okay, I love it. I love it because I was there. I was the one in front of our advisor at that desk when I got that email saying, hey, maybe you should prepare for next cycle. I was the one saying, hey, don't y'all just know how hard I worked? I was the one taking harder classes, like some of the pre-med students saying, don't you know I was taking harder classes? All that stuff. I was there. So I know what it feels like, but don't succumb to it. And if you are more than your GPA, if you're not this 1.4, this 3.1, this whatever, then prove it. And I'm not saying that to be, an asshole about it. I'm saying it out of love. I'm saying it to show you that this is what stands out to them. And if you guys want to stand out, and if you guys do want to get accepted and look impressive how you guys say you do, this is a huge way to do so. So don't hide from it. Don't get punched in the face. Like, dodge, block it, punch back and say, man, I can do this. Bam, 10 out of 10 on this quiz. Ooh, let me duck this F. Let me punch back with a 94 on this test. Like, that's what you need to do because you have to do the same thing in physical therapy school. All of this is just a test. All of this is just obstacles in the way to say or to see, are you qualified to handle what we're about to throw at you? So don't fear it. You're better than it. You guys know it. You feel it. So be better than it. So yes,
sir. Boom. That's it, y'all. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Listen, every single Thursday night, we are going to be right here in this group, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Block it off. And we're usually going to put out, a poll to just to see what y'all are interested in hearing about. And y'all chose this one for tonight. And so we will see you guys next week. And listen, take control of this thing, own it, absorb it. Do not shy or run away from the hardships or the obstacles. That's what turns you into the person that you are going to become or you need to become in order to be, a phenomenal student and physical therapist. So let's get it. Let's own it. Let's take control. And if you're struggling on where to start, how to get clear, how to, get more confident, how to have more control over your application process, start with that link, acceptancenavigator.com. It's a free series that we do. It's 4 videos where we take care of you. And after that, you get a chance to, sign up for our coaching program if you want to. But even if you don't, go watch those videos. They will give you some profound levels of clarity so you can take some massive, massive steps towards you getting into PT school. Let's get it. Y'all have a blessed one. We will talk next week. Bye.